Endless Evolution is a community engaged in the exploration of human experience. We engage with one another to understand our unique paths. We talk, we laugh, we heal, and we invite others to share this journey with us. Won't you join us? Endless Evolution.
So many humans, and where's the humanity? Sometimes we are scared, sometimes we love.
Well, good evening, everyone. How y'all doing?
We go good.
Yeah,
Doing good, doing
Better,
good.
better right now. We're doing better right now.
we're in the new year,
Absolutely.
new leaf.
Year,
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, welcome
year went
everyone
fast.
for joining us again to Endless Evolution. We're here with our second episode. Really excited to be doing this podcast. And along with me, Naomi Khalil, we have our co-hosts, Aaron Johnson and Spencer Murray. And the three of us are really honored and thankful and grateful for all of you who have listened. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and podcast. You can find us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or really anywhere you find your podcasts, as well along with YouTube. Just look us up as Endless Evolution. You'll find us, and we really appreciate all the support. So today we're going to dig into some more meeting conversation. Our first episode was a lot about introductions and getting to know us, and you'll continue to get to know us little by little throughout all of these episodes. But I think today we're going to really talk about more of what's going on in our world and how evolution plays a part of that, and how each one of us interact with that. So without any further ado, you guys, if you want to say hey, and if not, then Aaron, you can kick us off.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Before we get started in that, I just want to thank all of the folks who have listened and or watched the podcast so far. We've gotten some amazing feedback that just encourages us to continue going. You know, we were going to do it anyway, but it feels good that folks are connecting to, what we're doing here. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Before you go, Aaron, I just echo the same thing. It's timely. It's good to be here with you all. I mean, we're like creating community together with us, as we're inviting others to community. So that's the way to do it. And so I'm energized every time. Even after a long day, we do a podcast. I'm energized by it. So welcome, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And like Naomi said, we're going to get into some more meaty material and conversation, and hope that this conversation sparks conversation wherever you are, with your family members, with your loved ones, with your colleagues, in whatever capacity you'd like to have some of these conversations. But, as we were planning for this session, we kind of came up with this idea to speak about what's going on currently in our world and in our country. And for our listeners out there, we had this conversation about the political environment that we're in, and what's going to happen on Monday with the presidential inauguration, with a new presidential administration coming in, but having that happen right on Dr. King's birthday, and which is a day we generally take to, and not that we won't, we'll continue to celebrate him and celebrate his legacy and celebrate all that he stood for, and keep moving and pushing toward social and economic and other types of changes in this country. But having that inauguration being juxtaposed to all of the things that we celebrate, and we know that the election of this new administration brought about some anxiety for a lot of people. It brought about some feelings of hopelessness, and in many cases, I'm done. I don't want to participate anymore. And it we talked about this idea of being on an edge or being on the edge, and not to the degree where like you're gonna fall off or that, you know, this is the end of the rope or the end of the line or what have you. But an edge meaning a new, in many cases, a new beginning. What does this mean for us? What does it mean for people who will continue to move and fight for justice, that continue to uplift humanity, that continue to build positive relationships? What does this moment in our time mean? And so we've come to this edge before, and I don't know if you all want to speak on that or not, but we've come to this edge before, and many times in our history, and for some it may seem like I can't believe this is who we are. This is not who we are, and this is not the country we live in. This is not what we're supposed to be. And it is exactly who we are. It is exactly who we have been. And so the realization that many are coming to now is that this is something new, but this is something being, rehashed over and over again. And so just wanted to get your thoughts about that. What do you think about that?
So like this feeling of impending darkness, right? This feeling of like being on the edge of something horrific happening and everything changing. Aaron, I think back to like, is this how the people in the 60s felt? The 50s and the 60s with the Korean War and the Vietnam War and fighting for all of these rights, civil rights and women's rights, right? And racial justice and housing justice and economic justice, the war on poverty, like you go on, and were they at this desperation, but was there still an overarching sense of the people who inhabited this country and were driving for this country's best face being or best foot being put forward? Were the majority of the people really focused on being kind to one another, creating welcoming and open environments, and it was just maybe a smaller faction of people who were in power and control pushing a different narrative? And that's what I struggle with, right? Like we've been on this edge before, but what is new for me, or I wouldn't even say new, but what is overwhelming for me and others, I think, is just the sheer vast openness and breadth and depth of how many people now echo these sentiments out loud across all different, you know, social identities and social realities, right? So it's not just about race, it's not just about gender, it's about so many different social realities
Yes.
that people don't seem to drive for an America for all. So I think back to, I'm sure you guys have seen it, that Superman poster from the 1950s. I don't know if you've seen this poster. I wish I could pull it up right now, but it's a picture of Superman, right, as a superhero. And it's a description about how to be a real American, and that
Mm,
Superman fights for all Americans. And under his cape are people of all shades, of all walks of life, and that the way to be a real American was to truly be different than the rest of the world and fight for good and justice for everybody. And that was in that era of McCarthyism, right? Where if you
mhm,
were a communist, you were arrested, if you were wearing certain things, if you were gay, if you were, all these different things. I wonder, right? Are we replicating that history? It's just more pervasive now because we're connected minute by minute in an instantaneous way, where before news filtered in a slower fashion? Or is this exactly the exact same thing, or is it really something different? And that the vision of my America is not the vision of the America who wants all of these restrictive laws? Like, are they
mm,
just being as plain as day finally? Say, no, we
Mhm.
don't want an America with any of you. Before we used to say that, but now we're not even going to say it. Like,
yeah,
we're not even going to
Right,
pretend.
yeah,
So
right,
that
right.
that edge is very different, I think, because of technology and because of how instantaneous we get all of the information.
yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree, Naomi. The news and social media is just speeding things up. And I think about that statement that says, "Hey, there's nothing new under the sun," right?
Mm.
That it comes around again. And so when you talk about the people of the 50s and 60s, all that they're familiar with this. I do feel something different, not because those the circumstances are different in the social media. It's almost like when you look at like the age of the country, you know, you think about
Hmm.
learning your lessons as you get older, right? We joke around me having a birthday this month, I have a milestone birthday this month, you know, but if I'm still doing the same things at 60 that I was doing at 35, then some, you know, if I haven't evolved to see some type of truth, then
Yes.
you know what I mean? Then something, you know, something is there, and it's like, Aaron, you're so right. I mean, I think about all these times when America has seen itself at the edge, so to speak. And once we and all the humanity of people helping each other out in California, helping each other out from disasters, helping each other out from
Yes.
2011, and then it seems that once everything is settled, so to speak, or the dust settles, that we return right back to the silo, so to speak,
Yeah.
where we are,
Yeah.
back to that. And so I love this idea of on the edge, because there are opportunities for us to see them for ourselves and invite others to see them and speak to it. I think is right on time.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Yeah,
I like the way you frame it around we can show our humanity
yeah,
when we have some sort of crisis. And
yeah,
that shouldn't be the case, but
yeah,
it is.
yeah,
It's a common thing that when there's some sort of crisis, like the fires in LA, or if there's an earthquake or
yeah,
a flood, or the levees burst in New Orleans, or or the killing of an unarmed black
yeah.
man in the middle
That's
of the
right.
street. Like there
That's
was
right.
a reckoning. That
That's
was an
right.
edge moment, I think.
Yeah,
There was a
yeah,
reckoning across the country where folks finally said, "Hey, they're going to hear us." It's unfortunate that George Floyd had to die for us to come to that realization. For many of us to come to that realization. But people actually, I was so hopeful when I saw people joining hands, when I saw people fighting and speaking and protesting and demanding change. I felt hopeful. That was an edge
yeah,
moment for me.
yeah,
That like
yeah,
and you bring up this idea of opportunity around these edge moments, and I'm wondering how can we help to um, encourage or catalyze some edge moments that lead to positive change, that leads to sustainability. I came across this quote recently by Toni Morrison, and it's only been since maybe the recent election in November, when I it's only been since about that long since I've been familiar with this quote. And it's by Toni Morrison. And by the way, she's my favorite author of all time. Beloved is my favorite book of all time. And so I'm a huge Toni Morrison fan. But she says this is precisely the time when artists go to work. There's no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language.
mhm,
That's how civilizations heal.
Mhm.
And to a degree, she pushes us to not, you know, remain stagnant, um, as she recognizes that we are in moments, or we're constantly in moments where we're pushed to the edge, where we have to consider our humanity, where we have to consider the humanity of others. And just want to get your thoughts about I'll lead, but what are some of your thoughts around how we can use this as an opportunity to be on the edge, but still push, to still be creative? And I'm gonna agree with Toni Morrison here, and say that um, you know it as an artist, as a writer myself,
Mhm.
this is what I'm going to lean into. I'm gonna lean into my poetry. I'm going to lean into writing prose and narrative. I'm going to lean into creating and finding new
that's right.
ways to create. This podcast is one of the ways, but finding new ways to create so that I can continue to humanize not only just others, but humanize myself.
Hmm.
Feel that humanness within me and allow it to come out in ways that we have typically asked, other human beings to quiet themselves. So wondering what your thoughts might be about some ways that we can be on this edge and using your statement earlier, Spencer, to use it as an opportunity.
Yeah, it speaks a lot to me, that quote by Toni Morrison, and I
Yeah,
echo
it does.
your admiration and love for her. I think she's amazing. I've seen that quote cycle around. I saw it a lot in the pre-election. I saw it in 2016. I see it, and it's a reminder that some of our greatest works of culture, art across all ethnicities and parts of the world even have generated from these really tough times of crisis. And it's because when we come together in humanity, when we lean into our spirit of humanness, um, we really can unite with other people. I mean, it's why we created this podcast, right? To use our
Right.
language. This is a way we're using our
Sure.
language. Somebody recently invited me to consider entering a screenwriting contest, and I'm pondering it. It's due at the end of February. I might really do it. I've been talking about writing screenplays for years, so I might do it, like, because I need to
Love it.
create and I need to be able to connect with other people about my experiences, but about the human experience, right? In preparation for this podcast, we talked a lot about the concept of humanness and of oneness through humanity. I think King was focused on that, right? Like, I know he gets whitewashed a lot. And he was
Mhm.
all about the fight, but
Hmm.
his end vision, his end message was, how do we see each other as humans? And how do we love each other as humans? And I hate that that end message is the overriding message, and everything about his, you know, fight for justice is erased often. But I think it's important to focus on, in these times, how do we create around it? I love this idea of creation. Both of you know I love to cook. I'm part owner of a restaurant. I Creating food, and sharing that food with others is one way that I create community, right? I really love to do that. Having people over to watch the Lions games, which is crazy that I'm
Mhm.
even into football. Okay, fair weather friends, but we're from Detroit and the Lions better go all the way. But I'm just saying that, like, whatever opportunity I see to create community, bring people together around a common interest, a common goal, a common love for something, just excites me beyond belief these days, because it's that human connection that keeps me going on a daily basis. And I have to look to our past, but not even just our past. I have to look to the present. And if we look at Gaza right now and
Mm.
the horrific reality that has existed in Gaza, not just over the last year and a
Yes.
half, but over the last
Yes.
50, 60, 70,
Yes.
80
Yes.
years, that
Yes.
has been really amplified and put on display during the last year and a half. And yet, those people, you look at these kids dancing around and creating
Yes.
songs and figuring out how to make makeshift learning spaces and continuing to create amidst complete destruction. If that's not inspiring about humanity, I don't know what is. So it puts tomorrow
Yes.
and what's about to come in this country in real perspective for me, because we
Yes.
have to stay connected and creating, because even if things are falling down around us and even if things are changing around us, the powers that be want us to get caught up in our fear, right?
Yeah.
They want us to get caught up in our, trepidations about what is to be. But if we just continue to lean into each other and into this creation process, whatever that looks like, food, poetry, language, like whatever, I
Yeah.
believe that not only will we survive, we come out on the other end stronger and more united.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amen, Naomi.
Yes. Absolutely.
Amen. Amen. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's either we're gonna, I mean, like we were saying, all three of us creating, we're gonna create some more, right? We're gonna create. I can see us creating books. I can see us creating weapons. I can see this thing just evolving, our community. And I think creativity is the thing. This is why, we feel energized when we come together to do this, because we're tapping into that creative energy. And I think it's important too, because in these times, either we can complain or we can create.
Mm.
And if we don't create, I think it'll be easy for us to be pulled into everything that's pulling at us, everything that's wrong in our emotions. And so actually, hope and creativity is like resistance. It's like it's like, no, I'm going to continue to create. And I know for me, when I'm not creating, I don't feel I'm not at my optimum. I feel like I'm going through the motions of life, and responding to circumstances that are outside of me, which a lot will be coming. But the focus on the creativity, I think, is where our and as resistance, not fighting what we don't want and complaining all the time, but creating the world we want, creating it one step at a time, one person at a time, one community at a time, and doing what we're doing. Naomi, I couldn't say it better, and Aaron, that what we're doing is for that purpose. And so we have to create. Creation is life. Creation is life. Your creation is life, and we are creators, co-creators, whatever you want to call it. We are. We're creative beings, and I think our life and our well-being depends on that. Depends on creating, whatever that looks like.
That's amazing. That is inspiring in and of itself.
Yeah.
And I'm going to challenge our listeners to figure out what works for you in this edge moment. What works for you? Is it leaning into your creativity? Is it, I agree with you, Naomi, cooking is creating. Like I love to cook. I'm not that good at it, but I'm trying to get better. But like it's helping me to like connect to something. Or it might be, you know, um, volunteering, or it might be lending whatever skills and services that you have to another human being, just so that you send the message that you see them. And so whatever that may be for you, for the folks that are listening, I'm gonna challenge you to think of something, to think of how you're going to respond to this edge moment. If you're angry, if you're pissed off, if you're hurt, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling despair, if you're feeling apathy, I want you to think about how you're going to work through that and work in it and work around it. Like, what is it that you're going to do that brings you joy, that serves humanity, that will help to bring us away from this particular edge moment? Because there will be others, but things that will bring us away from this or help us to work through this particular edge moment. So I'm going to challenge our listeners to do that.
And I'd love to hear from them, right? So like
Yeah.
they can leave a comment on our YouTube
Thanks.
page. They can email us at EEAHHT3. It's complicated, but we'll put it in we'll put it in our YouTube as well, at gmail.com. That's EEHHT3 at gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to hear what your commitments are. You can comment on our podcast on Spotify. The more we hear from you as well, the more we start to build this very community that we are attempting to create so that we can evolve together, right? Because it's that community care that is so critical right now.
Yes.
Taking care of each other, hearing from each other, and anything we can lend to you, we're here for you as well. So
Yeah.
we'd love to hear from you. Comment,
For sure.
like, share,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure. And as we I think it's important, I think what's so good about this too is people see our own humanity and to be able to talk about that. And that's what they felt even from episode 1. And before we kind of talk about some of our own edge moments that have, helped us evolve, I was just thinking about what we were talking about, you all, and I think this idea of America, whatever, I mean, I think it helps when we don't see America, this country, or whatever, as a concrete thing that we have expectations from. whether that it's an evolving idea that we all can contribute to, because everybody isn't
Mm.
seen. Everybody, when you talk about Gaza, when you talk about our LGBTQIA plus brothers and sisters, when you talk about Black folk, people of color, people, when you talk about, I mean, people aren't seen. People don't
Mm.
feel seen and heard, and people often don't feel like their experiences are honored. You know what I mean? And so it drives to these silos. But and then there's these expectations, and when those expectations are not met, we expect something from our government, we expect something from our leaders, we expect something. And I think if we can kind of pivot and say, wait a minute, this is an evolving idea that we all can contribute to,
Mm.
no matter what the appearances are, no matter what people say. And so I know that helps me. That helps me help shift my energy to these opportunities we've been talking about. So
I love that, from expectation to evolution, right?
yeah. Oh
America as a
man, say it
concept.
again. That was a quote right
Absolutely.
there. Put it on Facebook. From expectation to evolution.
Maybe that'll be
That
the
is-
title of this
Yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
this podcast episode.
Yeah, I love
right?
it. I love it.
We have to
I
come
love
up with the title at the end, right?
It's
From
a big
thing.
expectation to evolution, right?
that's
I
a big thing.
love that concept.
Yeah,
Spencer.
that's a big thing. It's a real
Absolutely.
thing. It's a
America
real
as
thing.
an evolving idea
It
versus
is
America
evolving,
as
yeah.
a fixed nation
It's
with
not a fixed nation.
with a
It's
certain
not.
identity. It's
It's
just
not.
a beautiful
Yeah,
way to be
it's
able
not.
to survive, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
And
then we
thrive.
can also use that in our relationships, right? With our own relationship,
Absolutely.
my relationship with my spouse, with my mate, it's an evolving thing,
With our
Absolutely.
community, right? It's
Yeah.
not fixed.
Yeah,
You don't have a fixed identity in
it's
the
not
world.
fixed.
Yeah.
It's not fixed. And so I'm doing a starting this kind of transformational thing for the year. And I haven't done it every day, but one of the ideas was that it's really trying to switch your mindset from living in the past to what's meaningful. And oftentimes my thoughts that I have in my head, they aren't meaningful. The only meaning is what I give to them, and really transfer. And understanding that oftentimes we live in the past, what America was in the past, what my mate was in the past, and we operate off that instead of allowing each other to become new each day. And so that is the right. That's a practice, but the same way I think we can use that in all areas of our lives. But I also want to talk about what when you talk about, let's roll right into our personal things, because I think people are, as you said, people are dealing with things. They're dealing with life. They're dealing with real things, not just personal things. And so let's talk about how we have been certain times in our life been faced with the edge or these moments of evolution where our eyes opened or we became woke or whatever you want to call it, and talk about what that edge was for you and how you responded to it, and how you move beyond, and what opportunities did you take from it. And I would just want to open it up for us to talk about that a bit.
You want to start us off?
Sure. Wow, that's a great question. And I've dealt with those edge moments differently at different parts of my life. So I know we gave a little bit of our backgrounds in the first episode, but I lean into that a lot because in the earlier part of my life, I used poetry and writing, and I was really, I don't want to say reclusive, but I was really introverted. And so that was a way for me to just process my thoughts and my feelings. Um, and that helped me cope. It helped me, it helped me understand or see something, a picture bigger than, where I was, whether it be the confines of my home or my neighborhood or the city of Detroit, which has its own sort of living and breathing thing going on. And so that's how I dealt with it in the beginning, I would say earlier on in my life. At other points in my life, when I experienced those edge moments, like I went through a divorce, and I changed jobs, or I did something that was like really put me out there. I I really, like I said before, I dealt with it differently in at different points in my life. Um, but one of the things that has been consistent for me, and this probably plays into my, my introverted nature, is I was always regarded as the smart guy, in my neighborhood or in my family, or like somebody wanted to know an answer to something, they would ask me, right? Like I already knew.
Yay.
And sometimes I would pretend that I knew when I didn't know. But I relished in this idea of being smart. And I've always read a lot. I've always, you know, participated in, academic endeavors. And there was one point in my life where I didn't feel smart. I didn't feel like, I had had things under control. And I I came to the realization that my identity was caught up in that. My identity was caught up in what people believed about me, and how I dealt with that. So when they believed something bad about me, it really hurt. Or if, I was challenged on something, it really hurt because I'm thinking, why doesn't this person like me? And I really had to shed that notion that I was living to please other human beings.
Mhm.
And I can't say that there was an edge moment. That's probably been an edge like for my life, um, is to shed the expectations of myself that other people put on me. To that there was more to me than just being a smart guy. There was more to me than just, you know, um, people pleasing and that sort of thing. And so it 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 was really a sort of a journey of understanding myself and accepting myself for who I was, and being okay with speaking that to other people. So, like this question about like if that's that, I probably answered the more what's the growing edge more so than an edge moment,
Mm.
but evolving thing for me personally um, that I continue to not try to live up to the expectations of others, but do what I believe I'm called to do. And if I meet if I meet people that are alike, then I vibe with them and I, create podcasts with them, right?
Yes,
And
sir.
if and I, create these lasting friendships with them. But if I don't, it's okay because you don't have to
Yeah,
be in community with every person, like with
Right.
everyone. You don't
that's
have
right.
to, we're human and that's not just not going to happen. It's not realistic.
Thanks for sharing that, Aaron.
Yeah.
I think of what you said about you approach edges differently at different points of your life, and there is this kind of like overarching growing kind of edge. I think a lot of that stems from our childhood traumas and like what is that one
Mm.
thing that we really all need to kind of get over or get past for ourselves, and that varies from person to person. But I know that there have been certain points in my life where um, I leaned into fixing in order to get past an edge. I leaned into improving. I leaned into righting wrongs as part of the edge. The edge might have been some injustice or some really horrific situation. Versus other times where I leaned into acceptance of whatever that edge was and understanding it as part of my journey and learning what I could learn from that edge to be a stronger person past it, right? So, what really comes to mind for me when thinking about personal edges um, was the birth of my son, Najib.
Mm.
So, both of you know, Najee has cerebral palsy. He is confined to a wheelchair, doesn't walk independently, does not talk with his voice. He uses an eye gaze machine, is very limited in his gross motor skills and in his fine motor skills, has the personality of the world. But what he has taught me, and it took me about 2 years to learn of his life, was to create, was to
Mm.
look at see him exactly as human and as perfect as he is. He does not have disabilities. He has different abilities.
Mm,
He
Yes.
is not imperfect. He's perfectly made as he is. And that this
Mm.
world needs kids like Najee to teach
Yes.
us all about I'm gonna cry, the simplicity of love and humanity, right? So
yes.
for the
Mm.
first 2 years of his life, when he was plagued with seizures and landing in the hospital, and all of these just, didn't have sight, couldn't hear, couldn't talk, all of these issues, I went on this incredible, like, rabbit hole exploration of the why. What can I did? What did I do wrong during the pregnancy? What happened? Is it a genetic issue? Is it a this issue? And I was losing my mind, like losing my health, losing everything about me, and everything became more and more um confining and restrictive. He would get triggered, his seizures would happen because a chainsaw down the street or a circular saw or too much explosive loud clapping. So I felt like I can't go outside of the house, I have to stay in the house. Instead of looking at it like, okay, that's going to happen, and when it happens I need to do X, Y, and Z and just roll with life, right? So about at the 2 year age mark, and I credit my long life friend Stephanie Rimka for this in me, and she said, "Nee, he's perfect. Like, let's just see him as whole and as completely healed as who he is, and let's not worry about what's wrong. Let's worry about just giving him the best life that he can have, given the different conditions that he has. Because you have different conditions. We all have different conditions, right?"
Mhm.
So I stopped seeing him as something that was wrong or limitations or barriers, but rather as he's perfect exactly how he is. He just has different needs than I have, and he has different needs than you are, which is why I love the shift in the educational world from calling kids with special needs to exceptional needs, because that's it. They're exceptional.
Absolutely.
They have
Absolutely.
needs that aren't typical, so they're exceptional. You think about it from a statistical standpoint, but it really leaned me into this creative. So I started visioning instead of what was wrong and how I can fix it. That expectation of what a kid is, right? The growth charts that the doctors give you, the what they should be doing charts, at 6 months and at 18 months. I threw all that out of the window and I said, all right, so how can I create the best life for him? And how can I create happiness and joy for my life with him? And how can I just create moving forward? Create health, create experiences. It took me to China. I created, like, we did stem cell implants for him. And all of that shifting of the vision and the focus was what led him to have a healthier, happier life and continues to. So that was a huge edge moment for me as a person, as a mother, as a human, because I try to frame things as what can we do, right? Like, these are horrible conditions, but if we just stay focused on the horrible conditions and only stay focused on the why and how we got here, we never open up enough space or a portal wide enough for us to go to where we want to be and what we want to create. And I think he taught me how to shift then my relationships with people, how to shift how I approached my work, my job, my intimate relationship, like everything started to shift because I needed to now frame things as possibilities instead of limitations, right? So I went from my own bringing of expectations to evolving along with him. I had to. I didn't have an option because otherwise it was going to be the end of both of us, right? Because it's not good. And if you look at moms and dads, parents of special needs kids, they're often very sick, they're often very worn down, very exhausted, because a number of them continue to hold themselves hostage to the
Mm.
expectations versus giving themselves the liberation to creating and to evolving past that edge, accepting the edge for what it is. So the day I accepted Najee for who he is and how he is, and whatever he evolves to is great, versus he better get here, the pressure went off of me. And I would go into his special education meetings at schools and his individual educational plan meetings, and I would have to tell the team to just relax. I don't care what damn goal you wrote right for him. Like, that does not determine anything about my child. I
Right.
want you to
Right.
work with him, get him to whatever he can get to, and great, that's enough for me. Like,
Yeah.
and I think we need to shift that in all levels of the world. It's not to be complacent. It's not to just accept things as they are. It's to say, I accept things as they are, and I'm going to continue to grow with them forward versus living in the what ifs or living in the why or living in the how do we get here phase, because you've got to understand that only in order to go forward. Because if you only use those things to keep yourself trapped in the present, there is no growing and evolving, right? There is no getting past that edge. So that was a huge edge moment for me, and it really did shift everything for me in life. You're muted, Spence. You might want to undo that if you're going to talk on our podcast.
I might want to be unmuted. Man, I can't let the moment pass without saying, as one who's known you for years now, and who loves you, and who's, evolving with you, that I've seen you be carved deeper, because of that, and Naj knows exactly why he's here. Naj knows exactly why he's here, and certainly he teaches you lessons and teaches us all lessons. He knows exactly why he's here. When you were talking, I was thinking years ago, and I'll be very brief with the story. I had two cousins. My mother's first cousin had two sons. They're passed away now. I was probably in my 20s. Still knew them, but I was in Detroit. And they both had Down syndrome. And we went over to their house. They were having a birthday party together. And so they were in the basement. We were all in the basement, the adults just sitting around the bar or being wallflowers, whatever. And so my cousins, a bus pulled up from the school that they went to, and all their friends got out, right? And came to the basement. Now all adults are still sitting around. They came in that basement, y'all, and they were dancing like no one was watching. They were partying and laughing and dancing. And, at that time, the adults are sitting around like, and I was looking and I was observing myself and observing everybody, and they were dancing. And, everybody's looking at them like, oh, isn't that cute? They're dancing and just jumping around. And so it hit me, y'all. I was like, man, and the way we have these perceptions, what if we're the ones who are the deficient ones? Mm-hmm. The ones who are just sitting around looking and being wallflowers and concerned with how he looked and concerned with not just dancing as if no one's watching. I never forgot that. And that had to be 40 years ago, y'all. That had to be 40 years ago. And so, Nas knows why he's here. And so he's teaching us all lessons, And so, so I honor that moment. And I've had plenty of edge moments myself, plenty of them. And I name a couple. An edge moment is certainly when I left and came to the academy was an edge moment for me. To see something different. Leaving Detroit and moving to Georgia was an edge moment for me. To take that risk, because edge moments involve risk. They involve risk. And certainly, Aaron, I can vibe with you. Saying edge moments were certainly my first divorce and my second divorce was an edge moment. An edge moment when I was right to the edge, but I was on the edge. The edge, I think for all of us, the edge moment is really discovering who you are. I was at the edge of knowing who I was, really. It took a lot of pain. It took a lot of pain because I was living up to everybody's expectations. I was wearing a mask. I was pretending to be this and pretending to be that. I wasn't totally intimate with myself. And so I always tell people I was divorced from myself long before I got married. And so it was only a matter of time before that ended in divorce because I didn't know who I was. And so I was always at the edge of self, and certainly us Christian being stillborn in the physical, so to speak, in 2012, 13 years ago, was certainly an edge moment. And sometimes it takes a while to see the opportunities, but what I learned was really to embrace my pain, embrace my grief, embrace whatever I feel authentically, because many of us, I wasn't taught to do that. I was taught to be divorced from half of myself, half of my humanity, by suppressing all the things that I grew up learning were the domain of women, compassion and grace and love and all those things and being vulnerable. So yeah, life has just presented those edge moments, and I've taken them, I think I've always been a bit different, been a bit different from my friends. And for a while, I
Mhm.
walked that line, trying to live in two different worlds. And um, I understand how to still be in this world, but still, have acquaintances. I can still love people just who they are.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it's all been, it seems like my whole life sometimes is living on the edge because I want to continually grow, and I want to continually interrogate myself and challenge myself and think about all the ways I've been trained to think a certain thing. And Naomi, I'll say this last, a big edge moment was when I got back in school and you decided and chose to be one of my advisors when I got back in school. And so to begin to read feminist literature, and particularly Black feminist literature, which was real powerful, real instrumental for me, really changed the lens in which I saw life. And so that was one of those edge moments, and really it changed the trajectory of, I think, of my life. It leads me into what I do. So I think everything that, I'll speak again to the people who are here, everything that you experience is an edge moment to help you ascend to the next level, to the next place. But it's not to dwell, right? It's not to dwell in the edge. It's not to dwell in the darkness, but the darkness has lessons in there too to push us further and be able to embrace that too. So it's all good, and so I hope we all can do that. And I hope we can do that together. I hope we all
Yeah.
can do that together because there's universal themes here. I don't care who's listening to the podcast. I don't care the color, the race, the ethnicity. There's universal things here, and we've been taught to believe that there's not. That we have different experiences, but there's only one of us on the planet, so to speak. That's what we say. I mean, almost what 6 billion people, 7 billion
Well, I
people.
think we're near 8 now, but
Yeah.
yeah.
About eight
Oh,
billion
wow.
people on the planet, but there's only one, so to speak, one of us that we're all one. So I tell you what, being at the edge with you all and being at the edge with people who love me, um, and so when I feel at the edge, you all, when I feel anxiety, when my thoughts in my head try to attack me about what I should have done and who I should have done or where I should be and all like that, oftentimes, I welcome them. I don't try to fight them. I welcome them like a guest and say, "What are you here to teach me?" In the best circumstances, I do. And I remember my mother said, "This too shall pass." And then you know what I do? I call somebody. And I think you said
Mm.
that. You said service, right? I call somebody. I tell them I love
Mhm.
them, right? Because to get it, you
Yeah.
have to get it. You have to give it away. And so I call people and I reach out to people. So I don't stay in that place by myself because that's a dangerous place to be. So um,
Wow.
so I think those are edge moments, and that's what I do to really get past it and evolve it and grow from it.
I mean, I think that's right on, right? Like, I remember
Yeah,
when we were talking about this episode and like how
yeah,
we were going to approach it, we considered digging into that concept of Ubuntu, right? The African philosophy of I
Mhm.
am because we are. Like, we cannot be without other
right.
people.
That's right.
And part of our existence is accepting that not everything is rose-colored glasses, not everything is rainbows and sunshine, right? Like every
Yeah,
part of us has to come into the frame, so to say.
right.
We have to think about all aspects of the we if we're going to be
Mhm.
fully evolved.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be this vulnerable. So I just appreciate both of you and
Mm.
creating that space for me to be so free and vulnerable. I have that ugly
Absolutely.
Rudolph nose cry thing that happens. But I really do just appreciate us digging into this topic.
Yeah.
because I think this concept of like, how do you get past hard societal issues?
Mhm.
Dig into yourself. How did you get past hard personal
Mhm.
issues?
That's
What
right.
did you do in those moments
That's right.
to move forward? Because you're here now, and no
Yeah.
one's at
Yeah.
any point of their life without any type of tribulation, right? Like they're lying to themselves if they think that they've gotten to whatever point in their life they're at without any hard times. We've all had them, no matter
Yeah.
our circumstance, right? Whether we're incredibly challenged economically or incredibly privileged,
Yeah.
we've all have challenges. So the question is, how did you move forward? Dig into that, and then how do you amplify that into your community, right? Because improving self is about improving self for community benefit.
Mhm.
If we really do lean into that concept of Ubuntu, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Man,
I see the thoughts going. I see the thoughts,
there's
Aaron.
some tough
I see them coming, man.
But
I-
you know what? The toughest questions are about ourselves,
it really is. It really is.
um, because we can see somebody else. We can look and say, "Oh, this person did that, they did this," but we often can't see ourselves. And so we have to spend time with ourselves, and we have to interrogate what we know, what we think we know, why we think that. We have to interrogate all those things. And sometimes for me, the beauty of this for me is like sometimes I come to it as I'm speaking it,
Right.
like I
Yeah.
come to that realization
Yeah.
as I'm speaking to it.
Well, it's why a podcast like this is important. Just talking about it
Yeah.
helps you
Yes.
do that. And,
Exactly.
therapy, I mean, I'm not trying to disparage therapists. I think they're wonderful. But I've been through therapy. I go to therapy. I engage in
Yeah.
therapy.
Hmm.
The most beneficial thing for me in therapy is hearing myself say whatever
Yeah,
it is
that's
out
right.
loud.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes,
And
That's
generally,
absolutely.
the therapist is just mirroring back and
I
how did
know.
that make you
I
feel,
know.
right? And
I
they're
know.
Right.
putting all the work back on
I
you,
know.
right? So, like,
Yes.
I hope that this
Yeah.
podcast is therapeutic for all of us as
Yeah.
we're doing it, but also for other people to go, huh, yeah, how did I get past that? What was a edge moment for me, right? And what can I
Yeah.
contribute?
Yeah.
That's so funny, Naomi. I remember years ago going to therapy. I can't remember if it was the first or second time. And man, I was talking, and the therapist was looking at me and like, man, you're like healing yourself. You know what I mean?
Make my
You're
job
like,
real easy.
you
Yeah.
can hear yourself, but hear myself, right? And that's the space that we can hold for each other
Yeah.
to really listen, because that's what a therapist does. They
Yeah.
really
And we're
listen
and yeah, and
and
it's not
safe and find safety in a safe
exactly.
place. Yeah.
And they're definitely skilled with asking those right
Yeah,
questions
yeah,
and
yes.
pushing you to those edges,
Yes.
right? But
Yes.
like give yourself that ability to
Yeah.
think, to speak it out loud.
Yes.
That use of language, right?
Yes.
That use of
Yes.
language is going back
Yes.
to that Toni Morrison quote.
Yeah.
That's what we need to be doing in this
Yes.
moment.
Yes.
Staying quiet
Yes.
and just having that
Yes.
internal dialogue is
Yeah.
not enough. Like it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
great to do reflection, it's great to do journaling, but
Yes.
speaking it out loud to somebody else and being
Yeah.
in community with somebody
Yeah.
else, having your thoughts out articulated, again, you can leave thoughts, you can leave comments, you can
That's
leave
right.
ideas because
Please.
we can hopefully, hear that and integrate that into our
Yeah.
community, and
Yeah.
one of the things we want to do is always offer ourselves, but offer you all like, so how do we evolve, right? Like what are
Yeah.
some evolutionary acts that we can all commit to contribute to this ongoing evolution of our lives, to contribute to pushing away from those expectations and pushing towards that expansion.
Yeah.
So you heard us talk about creativity as resistance. Really that positive vision setting, like focusing on what we want versus
Right.
what we don't want. So I lob it to both of you. Are there any nuggets you all want to offer our listeners about like what are some things that we can do to be evolutionary in those moments edges? People are struggling to come up with like, well, what
Yeah.
did I do? And
Yeah.
they look at that moment and they're like, oh, I retreated. I
Yeah.
just let time pass. I never really confronted it and just moved on and kept myself busy and didn't
Yeah.
really let my feelings out. What are some things that both of you can offer? I'll chime in as well, but I really do think that talking with other people, um,
Mhm.
and again, I'll offer it again, that connecting to nature is huge, right? Like going outside and taking big deep breaths in the
Right.
fresh air. It is freezing right now in Michigan. It's about to get
Yeah.
real cold, like
Yeah.
20 degrees. But still, every morning I
That's
come
right.
downstairs and I go out on my back porch and I take 5 super long, deep breaths, no matter the
Yeah.
temperature. It helps calibrate my body and helps connect me and opens me up to be able to talk to other people, and to be able to just feel myself for a second. Because I wake up out of bed, I'm groggy, I don't, and I need that fresh air to kind of like clean out those cobwebs from the inside of my mind
Yeah.
and my
Hmm.
body and open myself up. That's one of the ways I prepare myself every day to be evolutionary.
Yeah.
And then just staying in community and texting people and calling
Yeah.
people and visiting, pop-in
That's it.
visits, and just,
Mhm.
hey, I was thinking of you. I texted a
That's
friend the
it.
other day. I miss you. You came
That's
across
it.
my mind. Can we grab a coffee?
That's
And
it.
we've now set up
Yeah.
a coffee date, right?
That's it.
Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
nothing to talk about. There's
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
It just,
Yeah.
when you have a thought of a person, reach out to them. Stay in that
Yeah.
community and care. That's how you get past those edges
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
I would say that definitely don't stay in isolation,
Mhm.
because I think people are longing for that connection. People are longing for that
Yes.
connection, but it's easy to stay isolated, thinking that, particularly in a world that doesn't, or you don't find safety, or you don't think you found safety to do that. Um, and I think, Naomi, those are so good. And I return to this idea of practice too, because I just finished doing every other Friday, I do a DV education class and talking to men and talking about this idea of practice, because you have to practice. You have to practice.
Mhm.
Anybody who's I think we practice everything. People practice basketball, people practice soccer, practice things, practice the instrument. I think the one of the last things people practice sometimes is self mastery. How to master your emotions. How to how to sow into yourself. With going out to nature, breathing, walking, going to exercise, doing all those things. They become a practice, and then when things like Monday hits, you know what I mean. Um, you know what I mean. It's
Mhm.
almost like a force field. You're still there, but it's not dragging. You're not sinking. You're not falling into the sunken place like that movie, right?
Right. Right.
Right.
Right. Right.
You're not falling into, and we don't want to do that. And so continue to practice and look for spaces there's many spaces that are offering this now, that are offering, hey, let's create community, or create one yourself with
Right.
your friend. And so and then the last thing I'll say is, reach out to someone beyond your tribe.
Mhm.
That's an action you can take. Reach out to
Mhm.
someone beyond your tribe, because sometimes we just stay stuck in our tribe because it's safe and it's familiar there, comfortable
Right.
there sometimes, because we found pain in other places. But reaching out to someone beyond your tribe will help you to grow, and really give you some, I think, some joy in doing that.
You know what I hear in everything you just said, Spencer, was
Yeah,
intentionality, right?
that's
Like
right. That's
it's
right.
one of my favorite words when
That's
I'm
right.
doing facilitation is
That's
like,
right.
how can you be intentional
That's right.
with your
Yes.
behavior and your
That's
actions
right.
every day?
That's right.
Intentionally, that practice creates new,
That's right.
neural pathways in your
It sure
brain and it
does. It sure
serves
does.
Yes.
and becomes like second nature,
It
right?
sure
And that's how
does.
you break down biases, but that's
Sure
also
does.
how you
Yeah.
heal yourself and create
Yeah.
better,
Yeah. Yeah.
better
Yeah.
better health, all
Yeah.
around health for
Yeah.
yourself. So yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like the
intentionality.
yeah. It's like I won't label them, but other folks want you to live in the default.
Right.
You live in the default, and you're gonna be angry. And you can't create
Right.
from there. You can't create from the
No.
default.
You can't even be whole. Like
No.
you can't be your best self for yourself
No.
if you were living in that space. Spencer, you spoke about something that really hit home for me, and this is not actually how I'm answering the question, but spoke about something that hit home for me. I started doing these affirmations every morning, but I do them in the way that I recorded myself saying them, and then I play it back to myself every morning, and I memorize them so I'll say it along. And I don't remember all of them verbatim, but one of them is, I take control of my mind in such strength or degree that my emotions, my instincts, and my body are under my control. And so when you said that, like
Yeah.
I'm an emotional guy.
Yeah.
Naomi would
Yeah.
tell you this. I'm an
Yeah.
emotional. I
Yeah.
get the high highs and I got low
Yeah.
lows and
Yeah. Yeah.
everything in between.
Yeah.
And so like I will wonder like why can I control this outburst of emotion at
Yeah.
this particular time? Sometimes appropriate, sometimes inappropriate,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
I couldn't bring that in. And part of it was practice, like
Yeah.
practicing
Practice.
being able to convey the emotion
Yeah.
without getting extremely emotional.
That's
So
right.
that's
Yeah.
one of the things.
Yeah.
But that's not even how I want to answer this question. It just made me think about that when you
Yeah.
said that. Um,
I mean, it's part of it. It's
It really
you,
is.
you
It really is.
validating this idea that
It really
practice
is. It
absolutely,
really
is part of that
absolutely,
evolutionary act, right? Yeah.
absolutely. But I've talked about several times like me being an introvert, and during COVID, my introversion like that was like that was great for me because, I could be an introvert, but I was still around people in my family that
Yeah.
I could converse with. And when I wanted some people time, I could go to them. And I know a lot of people, I don't want to discount how people felt during that time. Not only just the emotional impact that it had on us, but the
Mhm.
physical and the connection impact, the negative impact that it had. So I don't want to discount that. Um, but during that time, because I was disconnected from loved ones and friends and families, I came across this practice of people writing notes of gratitude.
Mm.
So I, I had considered myself like a prolific letter writer back in the day. So I started writing notes of gratitude. And where I didn't have people's email addresses, if I knew where they lived, I would, drop something off in the mailbox, just a handwritten letter, just talking about why I appreciate them. Um, I've gotten out of doing that, but I've shortened that practice a little bit. And this is probably more helpful for me, going back to what Naomi just said a little bit earlier. When I'm thinking about somebody, I will shoot them a text or
Mm.
even call. And as much as I
Mhm.
hate talking on the phone, I will call and just uh, talk to that person about why I appreciate them. It
Mhm.
might, the other day, the only thing I sent my sister was a text, and it was just a kissy face.
Yeah.
Just that's all it was.
Yeah.
And she sent back another one with the hearts all around it. Like she knew I
Yeah.
had just thought about her.
Yeah.
But sending like every day, I try to practice to tell. I tried the practice of telling at least one
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
what I appreciate about them.
Yeah.
And it helps me to be grateful for not only, myself and the things that I've been blessed with, but being blessed with their community, being blessed with their
Yeah.
friendship, being blessed with their love, to remind them that
Yeah.
they are loved, that they
That's
are
right.
being thought about.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
I know that when I've done it, it's always received with such,
Yes.
gratitude and
Yeah.
joy. And when I receive them, I feel the same way. I know a lot of
Yeah.
people limit themselves to telling people that on their birthdays, right?
Exactly.
You get
Yeah.
overwhelmed and overloaded on your
Exactly.
birthday. But can
Exactly.
you
Yes.
imagine what that feels like? Like if
Yeah.
we all did it just randomly throughout the
Right.
year,
Right.
like
Yeah.
that
Yes.
paying it
Yeah.
forward concept really
That's
does
right.
work because
That's
then
right.
Yes.
when you like that, then you tend to do it to other people as well,
That's
right?
right.
And
Yes.
Spencer, this
Absolutely.
brings me to what you said before about reach out to somebody outside of your tribe. Because
Yeah.
if you can also then send a
Yeah.
gratitude text or call to
Yeah.
somebody that you pretty much are like really not in agreement with a lot
Yeah.
of things,
Yeah.
Right.
you're creating humanity with that
That's right.
person.
That's
I have a
right.
lot of
Yes.
those people in my family.
That's right.
So
Yes.
sometimes they're on family text and sometimes whatever. And I just have to remind myself, like, I love this person because of this. I know we don't see eye to
Yeah.
eye on like
Yes.
90% of the
Yeah.
things, but I've got to find that 10%, that
Yeah.
1% that we do
Yeah.
see eye to eye in, and focus on that because I want more of that. But
Yeah.
if I only
Yes.
focus on the 90%, right, of what doesn't work with that person, I get more of that as
Yeah.
well, right? Because we get what we
Yeah.
focus on.
Exactly. We
That's
do.
that, law of
Yeah.
attraction thing, but it's true.
We
And
do.
so
It
Yeah. That's
is
true.
I
true.
love that idea of giving gratitude.
Yeah.
And how do you give gratitude to people that don't agree with you, right? that's how we get past
Yeah,
that edge,
that's
right?
a tough one.
How
Yeah.
do we, I know it really is, but like that might be the challenge. And I'm not sure everybody's going to be up for it right now. And that's fine because that's an evolutionary act, right? So when you're
Yeah.
at that right moment in
is.
Yes.
time to evolve to that point, great, do it. There's no judgment. There's
Yeah.
no timeline. It's just how do we get to that point of evolving with people instead
right.
of only and gaining and joining people,
That's right.
building bridges that I talked about last time.
Yeah.
It won't just happen unless we're intentional.
That's right. That's right.
Right. Absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
You help. I know we started off this whole conversation about the political moment that we're in, and some some friendships have been broken over this. Some family connections have been severed because of this. Some, I'm imagining that Thanksgiving tables and Christmas Day tables, were a little tense at times. But you challenged me to do this some time ago, Naomi, and that was to listen, to not just dismiss someone, to understand. And in some cases, I walk away and I'm like, I still don't understand why that person thinks that way, but I at least make the attempt.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
At least make the
It
attempt
takes
to
practice,
say,
Aaron. It
It
takes a
does.
lot of
it
practice.
does.
Yeah.
Because I
That's
want
no
somebody to
joke.
do that
Yeah.
to me or for
Sure.
me when
For
they
sure.
don't agree with me or when they don't understand. I want them to at least hear me out and give value to, my thoughts and my words. And so I have to do the same thing. And so, we appreciate you all for being here in this conversation with us. As you can tell, we are constantly, the three of us are constantly evolving, as we are, in the moment
Endlessly,
speaking about
one might
this.
say.
Endlessly.
Endlessly
Absolutely.
evolving, man.
Absolutely. But that's how we're going to heal humanity is when we continue to evolve, when we
That's right.
continue to change, when we continue to
That's right.
allow ourselves to be changed. And so we're going to wrap up our show. We like to end with a positive quote or inspirational message. So I'll go first. And this particular, uh, saying is, this particular saying will be something that we hope that you can take with you, something that you can speak to and apply to your own lives. So I'll pass it over to Spencer to take us out with the quote.
All right. Naomi, do you want to? I know we have a couple, but we always get good
No, go
stuff. You
for
got
it,
the email.
Spence.
Okay.
You got it.
Well, this quote that I found is I think it speaks to the edge, it speaks to the opportunities, it speaks to creating newness. And it says this: when you reach the end of what you should know, you will be at the beginning of what you should sense. I'll read that again. When you reach the end of what you should know, you will be at the beginning of what you should sense. And I just thought that was so good because we know so much, but then what we sense, and we're sensing this humanity, we're sensing this union, we're sensing this, and if we can use that to move into and kind of unplug from all the stuff that's around us that we think we should know in our heads, that we'll begin to live from our hearts. We can sense that from our hearts and live with each other and evolve each other from that point. So I thought that was great.
I absolutely love it. I'll throw this
Awesome.
in. One of my favorite quotes comes from a song from the Barbra Streisand movie Yentl. And it says, "The more I live, the more I learn. And the more I learn, the more I realize, the less I know."
That's
So
right.
it goes right to that. Right
That's
when you
right.
know, again, when you reach the end of what you should know, you'll be at the beginning of what you should sense because there's more to know, right? So until
Absolutely.
next time, everybody, we just invite you to stay in community, keep healing, and keep evolving. Peace and love, everyone. We'll
Peace
see you on
and
the
love.
next one.
All right.
Peace and love.
Peace.
Thank you.
Love y'all.
This episode of Endless Evolution is brought to you by the No Harm Organization, uplifting wholeness and humanity. Our featured music is Humanity by Lava La Rue.